Okay, we are in the character unit and we're learning about leadership. We're learning about what leadership is and what leadership, of course, is not. And that's currently the page that we're on. Actually, we'll be starting out about halfway down the page, page 133, and we'll be starting out with diligent. Now, I said we'll be starting out. One moment. First, I'd like to go back to the title page, if you will. Let's go back to I Can Make a Difference, the note to the teacher. That's where I want to go. That's on LP6A. Excuse me. Now, in this chapter, it says students will learn that given the right motivation, encouragement, and skills, they have the potential to be leaders. So this is teaching the students, that you as a teacher will be teaching the students, and this is what you've got to get within you and have in your mind when you're teaching the students. In fact, you've been teaching them how to be positive, effective leaders from the first chapter of this very unit. It's vital that students understand that leadership is an integral part of developing and maintaining a positive moral character. Children who are assertive, courageous, and have strong moral values are better able to deal with negative peer pressure and avoid risk-taking behaviors. These children are prepared to take a stand for what is right, even if they must stand alone. Teaching leadership to our children is about empowerment. We must empower them to speak up and stand up for what is morally correct. And then it goes on to say that other concepts that will be taught in this chapter are the importance of leadership within society and the world, the specific character and personality traits of positive, effective leaders, how to use the skills of leadership to make positive decisions. Notice it says how to use the skills of leadership to make positive decisions. One of the things that I'd like to point out is that the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program not only teaches you, gives you the skills that you need to bring the lessons forth in the proper manner, but it also not only changes the heart and mind of the student, but it changes your heart and mind also. The more you study and the more you practice the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program, the more you should start taking it on as first nature, so to speak, it becoming habit. I know the author of the program, Israel Hawkins, once said, the peaceful solution is kind of like when you first learn to drive a car. When you first learn to drive a car, oh man, you're really careful and everything, and putting your turn signals on and looking all around and driving real slow. And then next thing you know, you're driving down the road and, not paying attention much to what you're doing. You got one hand on the wheel, one adjusting the stereo or something other, and looking around, or these days talking on the phone or texting or something, which of course we shouldn't be doing. We should be paying more attention to our driving. But it becomes such a habit that you really don't think much about it. And that's the way that it should be with the peaceful solution. It should be habit. So we have a habit-forming thing taking place here today. All right. As educators, we often see children who are browbeaten, teased, and taunted by their peers. Think of how much their lives could change if they learned how to take on a leadership role, turn this thing around, assert true values to make moral decisions. Conversely, we also see children who have the ability to lead but are aggressive and violent due to past teachings or influences. Instead of leading, they bully and coerce others. By presenting this lesson, you can simultaneously teach both how to be positive, effective leaders to make a difference in their lives and the lives of others. So let's go back to that for a minute. It says, conversely, we also see children who have the ability to lead but are aggressive and violent due to past teachings or influences. I might add in there the experiences that they've had also, because those are influences, of course, and their experiences with family, with friends, so to speak, with teachers, etc. All of these things make a difference in their life, and it can lead you to be a non-aggressive, kind and caring individual, or it can lead you to be that aggressive and violent person too. So we have to be careful. Once again, as teachers, we want to make sure that we're practicing the peaceful solution and that our heart is in the process of being changed. In fact, let's go ahead now and go back to page 133. And you might want to, mark this spot right here or put a pin there, a piece of paper or something, kind of mark it, because we're going to be going back and forth a little bit. Let's start out with diligent. Now, it says diligent, to never give up. Part of it is being consistent. And yeah, to have that goal and making sure, of course, that it's a right goal, and then never giving up. Push, push, push. Persevering. I mean, there's so many things that go with being diligent. Let's turn to page 131. Turn back to page 131. And look at number 6, or excuse me, number 5. Positive leaders are diligent and steadfast. We're on page 131 and then number 5. Positive leaders are diligent and steadfast. In other words, they don't give up just because things might get difficult. If something is worth pursuing, it's worth pursuing with all your might. For example, a leader might think something that seems impossible might just take a little longer to do, rather than thinking it's impossible and there's no way, gloom and doom, there's no way it's going to occur, Rather than that, they set their mind to it and get going on it. And a lot of times you'll see things take place much quicker than you even expected once you set your mind to it. I know on a recent assignment that I had the opportunity to be with some men on, and we had a job to do. And looking around, it really looked like, well, not just men, but some young men also. And looking around, we had the opportunity to to kind of live this, because you looked around, it really looked like an impossible job, especially to think it was going to occur in, 1 day, 2 days, something like that. It really looked like it was going to take a very long time, and it was going to take some heavy equipment, some cranes and forklifts and things like this. Well, once we got started on it, and that's the thing, take that step, get started on it. You know that it's the right thing to do. It's the right job. You've got the goal set. You want to be diligent and get this thing done. And so once you take that first step, that first move to getting that job done, everything else starts falling in place. Now, could there possibly be some type of curveball or pitfall come your way? You bet. You might be starting to move something and you find out you really do need that crane, But in this case, it really moved pretty fast and we were done within days. And so I thought about that when reviewing this lesson, actually. So let's go ahead on back to page 133. And again, being diligent and never giving up, I wanted to look way back. Let me make sure here where I'm taking you. Okay, on page 15. Page 15. And all of these things actually apply, everything on this page, all these positive character traits apply to being diligent. But what I'd like you to look at is steadfast and persistent. Now, one of the things it says about that, it says you are determined not to give up or change what you have set out to accomplish. And that's not letting anything getting in your way. It's staying the course. It's reaching the finish line, so diligence, persistence, steadfastness, they all go hand in hand. And then looking at the rest of the positive character traits on the 2 pages, all these things apply also, especially that self-control there. You've got to have that to remain diligent. All right. Let's see. On page 89. On page 89, if you look about little over halfway down the page, and it starts out with, even if you have made mistakes in your past that you now regret, it's not too late to change and turn your life around. And, you know, anybody who is an advanced, those of advanced years, like I would say myself, what we have found out is that we weren't born learning the peaceful solution, and we didn't even learn the peaceful solution in elementary school or junior high or high school, anything like that. We learned much later in years. So it's not too late to change and turn your life around. It really isn't. I don't care how old you are. The peaceful solution works for everybody. Prepare so you'll never make that mistake again. Remember, where there's determination, there's hope. So if you were not taught the value of obtaining a positive moral character, and you've been negatively influenced, you can learn from your mistakes. Set your mind in advance right now to stand up and make choices that will build a positive moral character. Also, be determined not to repeat those past mistakes. Be diligent at it. Instead, focus on maintaining your positive character traits. But as we know, along the way, things can occur. Continue reading there. It says, do the best you can do to avoid making mistakes by setting your mind in advance. And that goes back to also to being diligent and having self-control and all those things. Setting your mind in advance and being prepared to handle the curveballs and pitfalls when it comes your way. If you do make a mistake, don't give up on maintaining your positive character. Give yourself room to grow and consider them as lessons learned. And so real quick on that, on the curveballs and pitfalls, go back to page 85 if you have your book. I would highlight a lot of this because some of these things just jump out at you, and you can look back and glance at it when you're having problems. But curveballs and pitfalls are unexpected situations that can test your resolve to maintain a positive character, to continue being diligent in your studies and continue being diligent in practicing the peaceful solution. And that's the important thing. You've got to continue practicing too. All right, let's go on back to page 133. Let's move on and look at excellence. Okay, excellence. Strive for excellence in all that you do. Now, excellence, one of the dictionaries that I've looked at, I have some notes here on that. It says to excel. One of the students I had one time, I asked that question. He said, what's the state of being excellent? So it's to excel. It's to surpass, to go beyond the limit or standard, the set limit. You know, going above and beyond the call of duty. One of the definitions was superiority, but not superiority in the way of being, you know, placing yourself above others by any means. You know, that's not what the peaceful solution teaches. It's superiority in what you're accomplishing. You're going past that set standard. You're going beyond. You're putting everything you have into it, and that's part of being diligent and part of being excellent. So it could be said that you are practicing excellence. Let's see. Page 127, I think it is. Okay, so on page 127, part of being considered, part of practicing to the point of it being called excellent, or this excellence and going past and beyond, part of that, it takes all these combination of these positive character traits. And one of the things that you can see, if you look at the middle paragraph on page 127, I'd like you to look at that. You can always tell a positive leader from a negative one by the outcome of their actions, beliefs, and ideologies. So you would be able to tell if they're excellent or not, if they're practicing, if their work has that word excellence behind it. Negative leaders lack integrity. They might be selfish, or they might lack compassion. And compassion, that's wanting to relieve the suffering of others. And it's not just wanting to because it says that. It's wanting to do it because your heart and mind has changed, again, to the point to where it's habit. You want to relieve their suffering. And one of the best ways you can relieve the suffering of an individual is to be diligent in teaching the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program. Because when you learn the Peaceful Solution, so many answers come your way on so many things in your past that you would have liked to dealt with differently. Things you might be suffering from right now, in fact. And by learning the right way to handle it, learning the right way to think about it, you can relieve that suffering. So they might be selfish or lack compassion and respect for life, and they usually only consider their own opinions or those who actually reflect their opinions also. They don't exemplify to their followers the importance of achieving a positive moral character and the benefit of attaining positive goals. In many instances, the negative leadership has resulted in hatred, violence, and death. So we want to make sure that, the page 133, it says what leadership is not. Leadership, of course, was not bossing people around, not using fear or threatening, and so forth. And then we get down to the acronym, the leader HIP, and we start seeing what we can do. And so striving for excellence in all you do, striving for that excellence in the Peaceful Solution and teaching it and putting it to work in your life. That's what we want to do. All right, ready. That's what R stands for, ready. Be ready to be an example of positive moral character to others. Be ready to be an example. Because remember, you're teaching by that example. Whether a word comes out of your mouth or not, you're still teaching. And then by those words that do come out of your mouth, you're teaching too. So you're not always going to have a book in front of you. Again, that heart and mind needs to change so that once again it's habit, and you are that example of positive moral character. So ready is being prepared or available for service. And that's really ready. Being mentally disposed, willing, prompt in reacting. Also setting your mind in advance to be ready to take action. So one of the things I'd like to share with you right now is I remember a student that we had in the Peaceful Solution, and he was a longtime student. And he was talking to us one day about his job and how he would get a phone call sometimes after hours, and they'd want him to go do this or that. And so listening to it and everything, and of course a person has the option to do that or not, of course. But if you're trying to do what you've chosen to do with all your might, and what you've chosen to do is right, then you need to think about that phone call as not a problem and not a hindrance to your leisure time, but think of it as an opportunity. That's what being ready is. If you are ready to serve, if you're ready to show the example of the Peaceful Solution having changed your heart and mind, ready, again, I'll read it to you, prepared or available for service. Got that? That's in the American Heritage Dictionary. The first definition, actually. I like it. Being prepared or available for service. That's really being ready. So if you would, I'd like you to take a note there and to yourself, however you want to write it, but think of think of that thing that you get called to do. Think of it as an opportunity to excel. And that's really showing your diligence in learning the peaceful solution. You won't always be able to. There'll be times when, there's something that's keeping you from jumping in there and doing that. But think about that. And it'll help you a long ways towards this peaceful solution changing your heart and mind. And it'll probably help you in your job too. I can't see where it would hurt anything at all. All right. Let's go to page 80, I think it is. Let's go to page 80. Look down about 3/4 of the page. It starts out and says, it is important, however, this is talking about setting your mind in advance and watching your thoughts. It is important, however, when these type of negative thoughts, and this is talking particularly about revenge, but when these negative thoughts, I'd like to adjust it just a little bit. When these negative thoughts enter your mind, that you immediately reevaluate them and turn them into positive thoughts. And this goes back to what I was just talking about the opportunity. When you get that phone call or someone says, hey, let's go help over here, or you get a phone call from the boss and, well, we really need you to come in if you possibly could. We could use your help to get this done. Instead of thinking of it as a negative, because if you're thinking of it as a negative, you're having negative thoughts about it. Just go past that revenge thing for a minute and just remember, when these types of negative thoughts enter into your mind, you immediately reevaluate them and turn them into positive thoughts and look at them as that opportunity. Okay? That's all I wanted to say on that right there. Let's go back to page 133. Okay, the next letter in the acronym is S, and that stands for sure. Be sure that your values are positive and moral. Be sure that your values are positive and moral. We're going to turn to page 6 in just a moment, or you can go ahead and turn there. While you're turning, I'd just like to say that to be sure, to be absolutely positive, to be confident, not in a manner of, puffing up your chest and all that stuff and everything, but to be confident in what you're doing. And that's one of the things that you can always be sure and confident of with the peaceful solution, is that what you're doing is right. You really don't need to question the things you're learning. Prove it to be true, but don't question it like, well, that can't be right. That's actually a negative thought. Prove it to be true. You hear it and you say, wow, that's interesting. Let me look a little further into this. Might even call and get some help on it if you need. But prove it to be true. Prove it to be sure so that you can be confident as a teacher of the peaceful solution that you're doing the right thing. If you're confident, if you're sure that you're doing the right thing, then there's no way that you can go wrong. And that sureness shows through too. So page 6. If you have your book, if you're there, let's take a look there. Part of being sure, and it relates to values. Values are what you believe in or feel strongly about, and they also play a key role in developing your character. The sum total of everything you value becomes your value system. And values, they're not standardized, but they're varied. It's based upon what the individual deems important. But there's certain values that are internalized by all people. These are moral values. Just like you probably don't want to go home tonight and find out that your front door's been broken down and someone has ransacked your house. Nor do I. So we value that feeling of safety in our home. You might have a high value placed on human life, which I hope everyone learning the peaceful solution does. And if they don't, they can get there at some point to where it changes their heart. But if you have a high value on human life, you could never be involved in any type of war or murdering or harming anybody in any way. You just couldn't do it. It just would not be part of you. You would have the habit of watching out for that. Down at the bottom it says there are as many different types of values as there are people, and no two people are alike, not even members of the same value. So based upon those experiences and interactions, we come to value those different things. Some people value a college education, some a trade or career, some what we already talked about. Others value staying at home and raising a family. And we have to remember, though, that what we value can also be affected by our culture and our religion. And so we have to keep in mind about other people, too. You know, just because their values are not exactly the same as ours, and even though their moral values might not be at that point yet where these moral rules are on a high pedestal yet, we've got to be able to work with people. And that's what you're doing as a teacher of the peaceful solution. You can't sit there and like condemn them in the class or something. You know, if someone gives even a wrong answer because it doesn't fit, well, that can be a teaching moment, but it's not a moment to attack just because they don't believe the way that you believe, just because they haven't understood the program yet, just because they haven't been practicing to where it changes their heart and mind yet. So we have to have compassion, we have to have empathy, and we have to have the self-control not to blurt something out that would be very embarrassing to them and they run off and you never see them again. And you can also, if someone brings up a particularly troublesome point, I would say you could also suggest that they see you after class. And then anybody else in the class that really felt strongly about that and wants to know, they could join in too. And you could have another session right there. That occurs many times, to where there's individual talking even after a class. Let's go back to page 133. And you know, all of this does apply with being sure, being ready, being diligent. And one of the reasons why is right here, the next one, H. You know what H stands for? It stands for humble. Being humble. Now it says even leaders have to be followers. And yes, you would follow that one leading you also, that is teaching positive moral character, possibly someone who has been practicing the peaceful solution longer than you, or putting it to work in their life a little bit more to where it's become habit in their life. You can learn by their example and by their words, by everything you see taking place. So even then we're followers, because we're actually learning all the time from whoever is leading at the moment. There's also situations where there's people who are put into different assignments, and where one person might have been like leading that assignment at one time, now another person could be leading that particular job, that assignment, that class, whatever the case might be. And so in that case, then whoever is doing the leading at the time is the leader. And those that were leading before are now followers, right? So they're learning all the time. So even leaders have to be followers. And I know a lot of people think that being humble is like letting someone just walk all over you. And that's not necessarily so, because the peaceful solution teaches us to stand up for what's right. If somebody is being beaten up, there's an example where someone's a bully's picking on someone else, and you stand up and say, hey, That's not right to be doing that. I'm going to go get the principal, if it's at school, or I'm going to go get the boss if it's at work, whatever the case might be. So there's a time for standing up and doing what's right. It's never a time to break out your fists and break out weapons or condemn somebody and start, yelling at them and calling them names. There's never a time for that, not as a teacher of the peaceful solution. But there is a time to stand up and say, that's not right. You need to be doing this differently. And it's also not being arrogant or prideful. So let's go back to page 131. And number 7, positive leaders are humble, even when they're the ones who make the rules, even if they're the ones that make the rules, such leaders show by example that they too are steadfast in keeping them. So they even keep their own rules. They also listen to concerns or advice on which to base decisions. So they're open to listening to people's problems and people's ideas and thoughts. Not necessarily that they're going to be put to use, but they can be. So they're open to that. Let's go ahead and look at page 14. Turn to page 14, please. Now, here's another example of humble. Number 5, not being proud or arrogant. A humble person will not argue, dispute, nor disobey set rules. For example, the bathroom rule is to clean up after yourself when you use the bathroom. Well, you don't like to clean the bathroom, but guess what? You do it anyway. Well, that's being humble. Being obedient, following the rules, that's being humble. You're not fighting against the rules. You're not being rebellious. You're not showing that, hey, I know better than this. That's all part of being humble. Okay. Let's move on to the next one. The next letter in the acronym, and that is I. The power or ability to begin or follow through energetically with a plan or task. The power or ability to begin or follow through energetically with a plan or task. Initiative. Take the initiative. Take that ability. Take that energy. Take the initiative and make the right decision even if no one else will. So taking the initiative, that goes back to what we were talking about too with looking at things as an opportunity. When something comes up, you can be the first one to jump out there and say let me help. Take that initiative, put the energy to work. And following through with a plan or a task, whatever that task might be, do it with all your might. Okay, the last one in leadership, in the leadership acronym, is P, and that's for positive. Maintain a consistent, positive, moral character and attitude. A consistent, positive, moral character and attitude. Let's turn to page 100. Turn to page 100. Now, if you look about, really the whole page covers it, but let's start with the curveballs and pitfalls again. Let's go one step back. I must think positively about my situations and always be ready to change negative thoughts to positive ones. Maintaining true morals and thinking will lead to positive actions and help maintain my reputation and character. And that's an important thing, to maintain your reputation. I mean, all it takes is one thing and it could be knocked down. And it takes a long time to come back. So thinking positively, you can avoid the curveballs and pitfalls by being prepared with the right answer. When I'm confronted with a situation that could influence me to make a bad choice, I will know what to say and do in order to maintain my positive moral character. It's all about maintaining that positive moral character now that you've got it, too. I know that if I set my mind in advance, I can avoid many situations that could have serious consequences. I might not know every situation that will occur, but by following a moral standard, I can readily judge all matters. This is an important one to remain positive, learning from your mistakes too. However, if I do make a mistake, I will not lie or try to justify a wrong, but I will make plans to avoid making the same mistake again. And you know what that is? That's setting your mind in advance. That's being diligent to practice self-control and set your mind in advance and learning from the mistake that you've made. I can regain the trust of others by making right choices, consistently right choices, that will help to maintain my character and proving that I've learned from my mistake. And it's going to take time. But by consistently maintaining, here it is again, my positive moral character, being positive, not getting down and beating yourself up. You can bully yourself just like someone else can bully you too. So don't bully yourself. By consistently maintaining your positive moral character, you'll earn the reputation of being a person of integrity. You'll be steadfast. Adherence to a strict moral or ethical code. That's what integrity is. You'll be obeying the rules and having that positive attitude. Everybody can get down from time to time, and it's what you do with it when it first takes place. Some people let it build up to the point of being depressed, thinking that there's just no hope, that there's no reason to even, get out of bed. And depression's a serious thing. It's a very hurtful thing. And a lot has been found out about part of keeping that positive moral character and keeping a positive attitude and not getting involved in wallowing around in pity and depression and so forth. Part of it has been found to be due to nutrition also. And one of the things that the Peaceful Solution teaches is to, make sure you're not getting carried away with the junk food. Eat the right things, drink plenty of water, be healthy. That drinking plenty of water is hard to remember sometimes, I know for a fact. So, the advice is to carry that water around with you and drink plenty of it. It'll help you to keep a positive attitude about everything. Let's go ahead and turn the page. Now we've page 134 in the character unit. Now we've got a few scenarios. We're just going to go over one or two here real quick. It says to read the following scenarios, then answer the questions that follow. And this is particularly interesting in a class because you'll get different input. In a classroom where you have a small enough class, I guess you'd say, to where you could have that input. But Letitia was elected to be the treasurer for a fundraising club. She was given the responsibility to collect all dues on a weekly basis. Possibly some of you have been there before and had similar responsibility. But several members forgot to pay their dues. Well, Letitia reminded them. You know how she reminded them? By sending them notes threatening them if they didn't pay by next week. Like the mafia or something, Well, was Letitia demonstrating positive or negative leadership? Well, of course, that's negative. We don't threaten in the Peaceful Solution. Now, you can set rules and you can show what can come to a person if they keep that rule. You can show the benefit that'll come. Or you can actually show the consequence that could come their way by breaking that rule. And it doesn't have to be a consequence like I'm going to drop your pay or something like that. It can be just the consequence of breaking the rule. If they're told, to be careful not to use an aluminum ladder around a power line, and they use an aluminum ladder around a power line, they're going to suffer some consequences that you had no way of stopping or starting or anything. It's something that came their way from choosing that course of action. So anyway, that was negative. She used threatening, which is not a quality of being a positive leader. Let's go ahead and do another one. We got time. Okay, number 2, after PE. I think that's physical ed class from many years ago. Richie and his friend Keith were asked by 2 other guys to cut classes for the rest of the day. Come on, our next class has a substitute teacher. She won't take attendance. Nobody will even miss us. For those of you that remember the substitute teacher days, Keith turned to Richie and said, come on, let's go. We need a break. Okay, now, no, I think I'll pass. I'll get a break on the weekend. And besides, guys, if you get picked up for truancy, your parents will find out, and it will go on your permanent record. I'd think about it if I was you, Richie replied. So the other boys reluctantly agreed and decided to go to class. You sure are a loser, said Keith. Well, smiling, Richie replied, yeah, but I'll be a loser with a clean record. Okay, so, Richie understood that about keeping the rules and how a benefit will come your way, having a clean record, not getting in trouble, and how the consequence could come your way from breaking that rule. He understood it fully. And then he also understood about being a leader. He might not have thought he was being a leader at the time, but he was a positive leader by standing up for what was right and saying to them. Now, he didn't say it in a harsh manner. He just said, no, guys, I think I'll pass because of this. I got a break this weekend. If you guys get picked up, think about this. So he was kind in the way he presented it, and he was just informing them of what could come their way. And you know what? They took hold of it. Yeah, they were kind of reluctant to do so, but they did. So they eventually did the right thing. And the question, of course, was who demonstrated positive leadership skills? And that was Richie. He influenced his friends to make the correct decision. That was the short answer there. Well, let's see what Sandra did here in number 3. Sandra's teacher put her in charge of a group project, and Sandra's group consisted of 4 of her classmates. So Sandra assigned everyone their duties. Carl had research, Joanne had art, Philip was in charge of supplies, and Sandra, in addition to being the group's leader, had typing. The group had 4 weeks to complete the project, and every other day Sandra checked to see what progress the members of her group were making. So we're seeing some positive things taking place here. She regularly scheduled group meetings to discuss any concerns, and she listened to everybody's ideas. I'm sure she had her own, but she listened to everybody's ideas. The ultimate decision was left up to her being the group leader. Everything went so smoothly that Sandra's group handed in their project early, and everyone received an A for their part in the project. So did Sandra exhibit positive or negative leadership? I think we all know by now that that she did exhibit positive leadership. She demonstrated a sense of responsibility towards her work and the compassion towards her peers to encourage them and nudge them along the way by checking in with them and see how they're doing. It doesn't say, this is kind of condensed, but she probably had to do a little nudging along the way. Possibly someone said, oh, I can't really, it's not coming to mind, I don't know, or I haven't really had time. And so a positive leader would encourage, not belittle, but encourage, and remind them that they're all working together towards a goal. Okay, now on the next page, on page 135, this is the beginning of a narrative. It's called It Begins With Me. And what we're going to do now is assign that to you as homework. Those of you that have a book or have access to the internet, you can go online and you should be able to pull up, I think you can pull this up online, this particular portion. Most of the book you can. I believe you can all of it. So anyway, that will be homework. If for some reason you can't get it and you would like to have it, well, call in, write in, do something, and I'm sure we can get it for you, okay? So that'll be your homework until next time. It's kind of long, but it's a great narrative. So let's go ahead and look at page 143. 143. Leaders are an important part of our society. This is what we've learned. Leaders are an important part of our society, and that the basis and quality of leadership starts and ends with moral character. Let's turn to page 126. Turn back to page 126, that is. Page 126. Okay. So who is a leader? And this reminds me of one of the classes we had recently. Well, of course, it was recently. Take me to your leader, Earthlings. And, of course, the reports on the news with UFOs and so forth. But apparently even little green men from Mars know the value of leaders. And I recall the leader, the author of the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program, putting a message out to talk to leaders, actually. Leaders can call in. If you're leading a community, if you're leading a group, whatever your leadership position is, you can call in and talk to somebody here about the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program and get classes set up online, might be even particular classes for your particular group. And he highly encouraged world leaders and leaders of different dignitaries to call in and learn what they can do for their people. In ancient and modern times, the need for leadership has always been important. Without strong leaders, a society lacks guidance and direction. And all through history, certain people were designated to guide and direct others in a particular direction, and these people were called leaders. They have authority over and are responsible for those who follow them. Leaders are not defined by age, gender, or nationality. Leaders are simply people who possess qualities and skills that motivate and encourage others towards these specific goals. Leaders can be found in all areas of our society. There are religious leaders, governmental leaders, community leaders, political leaders, and even gang leaders. Some leaders are responsible for an entire country, while others are responsible for a small city. Some leaders have a lifetime position in the office they were chosen to govern, while others are there only for a specified time. But the answer is actually that everyone is a leader. So there again, leaders are an important part of our society, and that the basis and quality of leadership starts and ends with moral character. And that's what we've learned there in this particular section. Now, one of the things I'd like to point out here is, and this might occur to you from time to time, I'd like to go back to LP 6D real quick and look at procedure number 7. Occasionally, the best intentions of mentioning everything on every page, sometimes you might leave something out. So in this case, we're going to correct that. Procedure number 7 was to tell students that they will now listen to a narrative entitled "It Begins With Me," found on pages 135 to 141, and explain that even in a bad situation, positive leadership can make a difference. Students should answer the questions that follow on page 142, which you're going to do as homework. And then we look at procedure number 8, and it says to encourage students to read the section entitled "What I Have Learned," which is what we're doing right now on page 143. And to conclude the lesson by reminding students that moral character can help them develop leadership skills and abilities that can make a difference in their lives and the lives of others all around the world. Okay, so let's go on back to page 143. Negative leaders can help to bring about hatred and violence. Okay, this is what you've learned, that negative leaders can help to bring about hatred and violence. You bet they can. Let's look at page 127 real quick. Okay, so I'm going to start at the top because this is the deciding factor. The deciding factor of whether someone is negative or positive, a negative or positive leader. We are literally surrounded by leaders. In every activity, organization, town, and nation, there are leaders. Regardless of whether someone is the president of an organization or the coach of a football team. Their leadership style will basically fall into one or two categories, positive or negative. Leaders, just like everyone else, can have both great and bad character and personality traits, and we talked about that. Some that we labeled as negative leaders, we know that they did have some positive character traits somewhere. We just might not have seen them. And some that we labeled positive in the activity, we know that they too had some negative character traits that possibly we didn't see. Okay, remember, a great personality does not guarantee a great character. Also, you got to remember that because really a lot of leaders, I would say the majority, they've got a pretty great personality. People tend to flock towards them, whether they're a positive leader or a negative leader. They flock to them because of their personality a lot of times. And they keep that personality going too. Even when you're seeing that the character might not be proving to be quite positive, they'll still be throwing that personality out there with some of the politicians, you know, or many leaders. You can always tell a positive leader from a negative one by the outcome of their actions, and that's what we just said, beliefs and ideologies. Negative leaders lack the integrity, and we read this earlier, but it's a reminder that they might be selfish, lack compassion, or, respect, true care and concern. They usually consider only their own opinions or those who reflect their opinions. Positive leaders, if you look on down, on the other hand, are people of integrity. They maintain and demonstrate their positive moral character consistently through their beliefs, attitudes, and actions. They motivate others to also attain positive moral characters and to strive towards excellence in all areas of their life. Remember that excellent, that going beyond there. In addition to this, positive leadership will result in a ripple effect that will be advantageous not only to the individual but society as a whole. And so hence the deciding factor between the positive and negative leader is the same thing that decides the quality, either positively or negatively, of all people. And those negative leaders can help bring about that hatred and violence by those who follow them, and then they do something and their followers do the same thing. We've seen that in some of the riots. If you're watching the news on TV and the news that's available to you, you can see the riots taking place, and somebody had to be the first one to say, let's go do it. Someone had to be the first one to throw the first brick through a window or whatever thing they're doing at the time, or the first one to turn over a car or light a fire and so forth, or the first one to attack somebody, and then others joined in. Now, on the other hand, the positive moral leaders motivate and encourage others to do their best and to achieve positive goals without unfairly taking from or harming someone else. And we just went over that also. We kind of covered both of these in one shot. And the next one is that everyone is capable of learning how to lead. A potential leader is first willing to be trained. Turn real quick to page 129. And of course, not everyone will become a government, community, or religious leader, but in every person's life, there will be those opportunities to lead. Remember the opportunities that we mentioned. Those opportunities to jump in and help are leadership opportunities. And when you do those kind of things, people are seeing that leadership within you. Regardless of how young or old you are, you can learn how to lead and value being that positive leader. Then a potential leader, on page 130, a potential leader won't mind being trained. And you can put these pages there right next to what I've learned. You can put those page numbers down there so you can go back to these things and look at it, and just back and forth as a reminder, and when you're looking up a certain thing. So not a born leader will join the crowd. Most people aren't either. but don't let that discourage you from learning how to lead. There are many things we are born not knowing how to do, such as reading, writing, riding a bike. Learning these skills might have been difficult at first, but you not only learned how to do them, you learned how to do them and do them well. Leading others requires character, personality, and skills. So see, you got three things going there. You got to have the skills, you got to have the personality that goes along with it to be an effective leader, but you must have the character to be a positive leader. You got to have that positive character. To be the very best, you've got to develop a positive character and a harmless, helpful personality, that you would never harm anybody. You already know that you must maintain and develop a positive character on a daily basis. And as for skills, well, you can learn the skills relative or relevant to leadership in the same way you learned all your other skills. Guess what? You practice, practice, practice the peaceful solution, okay? That way, your heart and mind will be changed. Okay, well, we're going to stop right there. Page 130, or excuse me, we're on page 143, and we are on the fifth point there. Learning to be a positive leader can be achieved by combining my positive character traits with my personality and skills. And that's where we'll be starting out in the next class, which should be this coming, let's see, the 23rd. Is that right? I think it's the 23rd on Sunday at 5:30. And that's it for the class tonight. I appreciate everybody being here. Thank you very much.